Hello everyone, welcome to the first video on this channel. I wanted to start things off with a bit of a bigger project, so I figured, why not make a tier list of all the moons of Lethal Company? For the two people who don't know what Lethal Company is, here's a very basic description. Lethal Company is a co-op horror game that released almost exactly 1 year ago in late October of last year. The goal of the game is simple: enter the facilities on various moons with the goal of collecting as much scrap as possible with the help of your team. Now that the introduction is out of the way, we can move on to our first moon. Experimentation is like the oldest child of the moons. When you don't know there are any others, you love it. But the second you do, you never go back. Yeah, if you really want to get scrap worth enough to make quota, there are far better moons with have literally no other downsides. It's hard to really call Experimentation bad because it's a perfectly average moon in every way. The only real difference that's sort of special is one of 3 moons that have a 1x map multiplier. Basically, all the maps that have a multiplier that changes the average size of all the layouts. For example, March is a map multiplier of 2x, meaning that, on average, March's indoor maps are twice the size of Experimentation's. These size multipliers will really come in handy later. For now, all you need to know is that EXP is going in D. Oh, and here are the creature spawns. I forgot to add these in a meaningful way. Bye. Assurance is objectively the best free moon in the game, and you will never convince me otherwise. Like its sister moon, Assurance has a small interior with a 1x map multiplier. As such, most write it off as Experimentation's weird younger brother. However, it's not. It's just better. Not only does Assurance have a much better loot table with more high value loot, but it also has way better spawns, since Bucker spiders can go to hell, that are much easier to deal with, like snare fleas, loot bugs, and the occasional thumper here and there. With enough skill, all these threats can easily be dealt with, and even the exterior creatures are easier, with it mostly just being dogs and I haven't even mentioned that it's the moon that is the fastest to enter with just a little bit of speedrunning. It's no wonder it's always used for solo high quota runs. If it's good enough for the speedrunners, it's good enough for you. So yeah, I guess you can tell S tier, no contest S tier, I love this moon, hell yeah. Now I have a weird history with Vow. I used to absolutely hate it and thought it was the worst moon in the game, but I have grown and found far worse ones we'll get to later. My main grievance with Vow was just how unremarkable it was. The only part that anybody cared about was the high spawn rates for giants and brackens. And looking at the spawn table for Vow, it's easy to see why. Brackens have a near 1 in 4 chance to spawn here, Maneaters having 3rd place when it's a facility or mansion, and a close second on the mineshaft. However, both of these creatures, while dangerous, can be stopped with enough crew and skill, which, in fairness, can be a bit hard to come by. That mixed with its remarkably average scraps gets you one of the most average moons in the game. C tier for average, I guess, I don't know. Offense, 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 offense. Where to begin with offense? It's kind of like the experimentation of the intermediate moons, where you might think it's alright at first, but the second you look at the spawn rates, you get the hell out of there. What are these? Offense not only has the highest spawn rates for thumpers in the game, but also the same for coil heads, which combined aren't very fun. I'm usually pretty neutral with my opinions on the mineshaft interior, but on offense, this place makes me like gouge my eyes out. If a coil head manages to sneak on the elevator behind you, which it is more than capable of doing, it means you are now stuck until someone teleports you back from the ship, at which point you now have to go back and grab your loot while dealing with a bootleg weeping angel. This place seems to actively want to be hated. Offense is one of the only moons that I can say adds nothing to the game. Nothing! There aren't even any sticker tapes here. They're on like every other unpaid moon except offense. So yeah, I don't care if I'm angering the offense stands with this. This moon is actual horseshit. D tier. Easy. Oh boy, here we're getting some really controversial takes. I don't like March. It has the 2nd largest map interior behind Titan, but is generally considered to be one of the best moons in the game. I don't agree. Oh, but March has 3 fire eggs. It's my ass. Those eggs don't help the fact that the interior is so goddamn big you can fit the entire company monster in there. And that's not even mentioning these god-awful spawns, like what in the company are these? The 3 most common mobs are thumpers, bunker spiders, and brackens, 3 of my least favorite in the game. And I've had runs where 3 thumpers have spawned at the same time and wiped the entire team because no one can kill them fast enough. Worst of all, the scrap isn't even worth it, with the average amount being almost identical to Assurance, which has the bonus of there not being an entire Suicide Squad worth of these shits. However, credit where credit's due. March is fine, outside of personal preference. It's fine if you have a full team of capable crew, which, as previously stated, is hard to come by. But based on the fact that it's really just a slightly worse Assurance, it gets a comfortable A tier. Please don't hurt my family. Screw Adamant, screw it to the uptillionth degree, this moon is the most RNG based one in the game. While the scrap table is pretty good and the size multiplier is only 1.18 times, this doesn't save it from having the worst spawns in the entire game. Just look at this shit and tell me this is a good moon to get scrap from. Once again, the most common mobs are the Thumper and Bunker Spider. Hooray! But it also has the Man-Eater really close behind them, which, as previously stated, aren't usually that hard. But when there are constantly Thumpers and Bunker Spiders running around eating people while Man-Eaters start crying at every chance they get because, you know, they're watching people die, then you'll just have a recipe for disaster. Worst of all, you can't really prepare for any of them because they have an almost equal chance of spawning them. Usually you'll get all 4 at the same time, and I'm not even going to get into the baboon spawns. Holy shit. This hellhole doesn't get the benefit of the doubt I gave to March, because at least you can say it's good in a vacuum. F tier. Easiest rank ever. Hey, quick break to remind you to go take care of yourself. Get a drink, use the bathroom, something like that. We're about halfway through and I'd appreciate it if you'd like the video and maybe subscribe. You don't have to, I'm just putting that out there that I'd appreciate it. Now on to the rest of the video. Rend is like the Assurance of the paid moons. Not only is it the second cheapest paid moon in the game, costing only 550 credits, but it also has a really good loot table and pretty fair spawns for a late game area. The most common spawns are Nutcrackers, Jesters, and Brackens. The first two are pretty easy to deal with, and with the shotgun from the Nutcracker, the third is a pretty damn easy kill with a single shell to the cranium. The only real dangers are the coil heads and the mask, the former because they're unkillable, and the latter because they can really confuse you if you're in a dark room or outside, where the blizzard makes visibility next to none. With all that said, this is where the exterior mobs really start to matter in my opinion. The only possible spawns are dogs and giants, which alone aren't that hard to deal with, but combined can make a pretty big problem. However, with all that said, I think it's easy to see that Rend is just objectively a really good moon, and as such deserves S tier. If Rend is the Assurance of the paid moons, then Dyne is Vow. What I mean by that is it's often ignored because of its superior sibling. Since the entrance is put in the middle of the map for some stupid reason, Giants will just camp the area and wipe your entire team in mere seconds. Honestly, I don't know why Giants are on the Icy Moons to begin with. They are literally called Forest Giants. It doesn't make any sense. Putting that aside, let's take a look at the loot table, which is actually pretty good and slightly better than Rend's. Now we look at the mob spawns, and there we go, that's why everyone hates this place. Butlers are by far the most common, with more than 10% higher rates than every other creature on the moon. It also has a similar problem to offense, being that since most of the creatures have very close rates, you never know what you'll get and you can't account for any of them. And that's not even mentioning that the only other creature with more than a fraction of a percentile difference to the rest are the Barbers, one of the most unfair mobs in the entire game. And the exterior doesn't get much better. Giants have a 60% chance to spawn. Dogs having 30%, and unlike with Rend, both old birds and can spawn, with the murder bots at 7.83% and at a mere 1.81%. Overall, it's easy to see why this moon is more hated than its icy counterparts, which is why I'm putting it in, you know what? No, D tier. It still has enough valuable scrap that you might want to go there, but its risk far outweighs any reward it could provide. Titan used to be the most expensive moon in the game, costing a whole 700 credits. However, now it is beaten by our next moon that we'll get to shortly. Titan is probably the most consistent moon to get a lot of scrap on fast due to its extremely small exterior and main entrance and fire being right next to each other. The loot table definitely helps with this since most of the more common items are one-handed and lighter, so they can easily be taken in and out of the facility. Titan's main downside, however, comes from the map size and the mob spawns. Titan has a map multiplier of 2.25 times, the largest in the entire game, and its mob spawns are interesting to say the least. Technically, jesters and nutcrackers are the most common. However, since the spawns are all so close together, I'm starting to notice a trend with this, it leads to you really not knowing what'll be waiting for you inside. The exterior mobs, meanwhile, are a lot more predictable. Eyeless dogs spawn about 65% of the time, while giants only have a 26% chance. And following the path of Dine, old birds in have a 5.69% chance and 3.25% chance respectively. Titan in general doesn't really do much. It kind of just exists to be a more expensive version of Ren that people say is better because it costs more. I'll give it B tier, better than Dime, but its cost really holds it back from being worthwhile. Artifice is a secret moon that you can find by reading the message in the back of the locked shack on Adamant's, the only thing that place was ever good for. Once you enter the code 61 art on your terminal, you are greeted with this. Remember when I said there was a moon more expensive than Titan? Once you pay your life savings, you can land on the best moon in the game. Now you're probably thinking, that's great, but what's the catch? And the answer to that is literally everything else. Artifice is the only moon able to spawn every single enemy in the entire game, both indoor and outdoor. On the bright side, at least all the outdoor mobs can be stunned. Well, except for... All things considered, the scrap rate makes Artifice actively worth all the danger, and despite everything, I still go here fairly often. A tier, just don't go alone, you will die and lose all your scrap. Emban is a secret moon that you can learn about from reading the Old Bird bestiary entry. It costs about 150 credits to visit, and seems like a good, cheap moon to find some new lore about the game in. Oh god damn it. Yeah, Emban is basically just Zeker's idea of a cruel joke. For those who don't know, on every moon there's a power level system that determines how many creatures can spawn. Depending on the difficulty of the creature, they'll take anywhere from 1 to free power on any moon. Each of these moons has power caps for the interior and exterior of the building. The outdoor power level on Emban is 70. 70! Do you have any idea how massive that is? The second highest outdoor power cap is Adamant's with 13. That's more than 5 times the power cap. Just look at these spawn rates. It's actually insane. The interior rates on the other hand are actually pretty normal, with the exception of having the highest spawn rates for spore lizards in the game. Oh, and there's also like way too many traps here, like so many traps. I genuinely don't know why you'd ever want to come here for any reason, and as such, it gets an easy F tier. Oh, and for the love of God, please don't pull the apparatus. Okay, this is kind of cheating, but hell, it's on the wiki, so I'm tossing it in here. Liquidation is an unreleased/unfinished moon in the game's files that only exists there. You can't find it on the terminal on any bestiary entry like Emban. It only exists as a name and a fair amount of basic code. It costs the same as Titan at around 700 credits and has a pretty good loot table, similar to Titan and Rend. Also similar to Rend and Titan are the high spawn rates for nutcrackers and jesters. There isn't any code for the outdoor entities, with literally the only other confirmed info we have being the terminal entry, which you can mod into the game. Quote, previously mined for its rich industrial resources, Liquidation is now largely an ocean moon. And that's literally all the info about it. From what I can tell, it'll probably be similar to Titan in terms of loot and Rend in terms of spawns, but without actually being able to see the moon for myself, I'm going to give it B tier, at least until it's added in a future update. And that's the end of the video. Holy guacamole, I was not expecting it to be this long. If you disagreed with any of my opinions in this video, then go yell at me in the comments about how Assurance is actually awful, or how Offense is actually a really good moon. Seriously, I'd love to see anyone give me a good reason why this moon deserves love. But with all that said, I hope you have a somewhat pleasant rest of your day, and I'll see you when I see you.